Hi, I get to meet some really incredible entrepreneurs and owners doing some amazing things with their businesses. Recently, I sat down with John Funk, who owns a company that is all about exhibits at trade shows. And it's a fascinating business. I learned a lot. I think you will too. Let's go talk to John. Hi everybody, thanks for jumping on Wealth Protector TV. You might be listening on Wealth Protector Radio to this. Really excited to be here today with John Funk, who is the owner and president of Skyline Displays of Orange County. John, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and fascinating company. We've got some great images going on in the background. John, you and I have talked a lot offline about your company. It's fascinating to me, and I think this is a space, your company, which we're going to hear about here in a minute. Not a lot of people get to see behind the scenes of your company. A lot of us have seen the displays, but I want to jump right in and have you kind of tell me a bit about your background, what the organization of Skyline, your focus, and kind of just jump right into that.
Sure. Well, the interesting thing about trade shows, which I found out when I first learned about them, was that it's a bit of a mystery to the general public, because you do have trade shows for the general public, but they're usually home shows or garden shows or something like that. You know, we call them consumer shows.
Mm-hmm.
But the vast majority of trade shows in the industry are industrial trade shows, commercial trade shows, B2B trade shows. And
that unless you're in that space, I wouldn't be going to the
exactly,
trade show.
unless
Right?
you're in that space. And most people don't realize that most products and services get to market by way of trade shows. They get their distribution, they get their brand out there, and it's called face-to-face marketing. That is the most effective way to bring your products and services to market in most cases.
Explain that to me. So, what do you mean by they get to market through the trade show? And that's where they're first exhibited and start getting attention?
As an example, companies go to trade shows for a variety of reasons. One is they may be looking for distribution. They may not sell directly to their end users, but they're looking for people who will sell to their end users. So they're looking for distribution.
Okay.
In some cases, in the example, for example, of retail products, they may be a manufacturer who is either looking for distribution that will eventually get them into the retail sector,
Okay.
or they may be looking for retail buyers. The key thing is who is attending the show, what's the show all about, and who's attending the show, and can they market their products and services to the attendees of the show. And there are thousands of trade shows around the country in specialized vertical markets. And many of our customers, for example, will do 4, 5, 6, 10, sometimes a lot more than that, trade shows every year.
Oh, they will, okay.
And it's because their particular product or services have application maybe not in just one or two market segments or vertical markets, but several. And so they'll be going to these shows with different attendees and different buyers at these shows in order to channel their products and services into those shows, the attendees.
So I have some questions about that because that's very interesting. I just want to make sure that Skyline's a huge corporation. So explain before we go down a little bit further your role with Skyline, and you're here in Orange County, California. How does that all play out?
Yes, of course. Skyline is actually the manufacturer that my company represents. Skyline is a manufacturer of custom modular exhibits and portable exhibits. They're based in Eagan, Minnesota.
Okay.
They are just about approaching their 40th year in business.
Is that a big tourist trap there, Eagan, Minnesota? Or is there a
I
reason
don't
to go
think so.
there?
Not too many people have heard of Eagan, but they've heard of the Twin Cities.
Right, the Twin Cities. Right.
Eagan is part of the Twin Cities. That's a very dynamic business area up there. And Skyline started out as a representative for another exhibit manufacturing company, and then they quickly wound up developing products for themselves. It was started by two individuals who, about 40 years ago, met by accident in an airport.
Really?
They didn't know each other. They struck up a conversation in an airport, and it led to a business partnership, which eventually built this great company.
Interesting.
And Skyline, as I said, is the manufacturer. So they manufacture the systems themselves, the display systems. They also manufacture the graphics that go on those systems.
Okay.
And they provide many other types of services, rental services, educational services for exhibitors, things like that. And the way that Skyline gets their products to market is through its distribution network. And I'm part of that distribution network. Skyline Displays of Orange County is the company that represents Skyline in Orange County, San Bernardino County, and Riverside County. The
Okay.
vast majority of our customers are headquartered in these areas.
Okay.
There's another Skyline dealer, and I refer to him as a dealer.
Mm-hmm.
There's other Skyline dealers all over the country. There's another one in San Diego that represents those two counties down there. There are two Skyline dealers up in LA that represent the 5 LA counties. There's a dealer up in the Bay Area that covers Northern California, and so on throughout all the states.
Do you compete with these other dealers, or is it just territory specific and it's all?
We're not really
Exactly.
competing in the sense that bidding and things like that, because most companies prefer to deal with a company in their area if they can.
Okay.
And generally speaking, that is the case. We do have some customers in other states or other counties or what have you, as do other Skyline dealers. But for the most part, we're dealing with companies that are in our immediate area. And the reason for that is that the face-to-face aspect of it, meaning customers face-to-face, strategizing about shows, letting them walk into a showroom and take a look at what the options are, those are valuable things for the person who's buying trade show displays and strategizing about their marketing efforts in trade shows. So in another sense, though, the Skyline Network is very much affiliated in such a way that it benefits the companies that choose us.
Oh.
And the reason is because exhibitors, for example, from this area, they may be headquartered in this area, but they may be exhibiting anywhere in the world.
Oh, right.
And that's true from New York and Chicago and Orlando and all over the place. All of these companies that deal with Skyline offices, they exhibit all over the place. So what happens is that whenever show services are needed in the vicinity, such as installation dismantle services and other types of logistic services, those services can be provided by the affiliate Skyline office in that area. As an example, we have about 70 or 75 companies that hire us to store their exhibits and manage their programs for them.
Like right here on your premise?
Right here on the premises.
Interesting.
So as a perfect example, this morning, we had a large medical company was here, and they were over next door in our warehouse previewing their exhibit, which is going to be going to a show in October. We build the exhibit before it goes out. In this case, they had some new graphics, so they wanted to come over and check everything out and make sure everything was just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Had a few discussions about a few little loose ends as far as the show goes. And now the booth will be packed down, and it'll be transported to the advanced warehouse of the show.
Ah.
And then we, my office here, will contract the office. In this particular case, the show is in Sacramento.
Uh-huh.
So we'll be contracting our Bay Area partners to set up and dismantle the booth up there.
Oh, wow.
And then what happens is that our Skyline office in Chicago or Dallas or New York, when their customers are exhibiting in Southern California, they will hire my company to install and dismantle their exhibits.
Okay.
So in that respect, we all do business with each other.
Right, right. Which seems like a great network to have if you're a business that's exhibiting. This platform's awesome.
It's one of the great advantages that Skyline has over most other companies in the business. There's really no other company that has what we refer to as a dedicated distributor network
Uh-huh.
like Skyline has. Because years ago, when the company was founded, that's the way we built the network. The owner was smart enough to be able to build the network from the ground up so that all of the people in the network were totally dedicated to Skyline. And that's pretty much the way it's been operating for all these years.
How did you get into this business? It's trying to understand, you don't meet too many people like you that are unique running this business. Was there someone that motivated you to get in, or what was that?
Well, what motivated me to get in was I was unemployed. I was looking for a job.
That's a good motivator.
And what happened was that back in 1985, I had come over to Southern California and moved my family from Hawaii. My kids were young at the time.
Hence the shirt you're wearing.
Hence the Aloha shirt I'm still wearing. And we moved over from Hawaii, and I took a job in broadcast in this area, which was my previous occupation. I had been in television for the last 8 or so years in Hawaii. That job didn't work out, and there I was in a new area with really no very good contacts, not really knowing the area too well, and had to kind of start over again. So I went to visit a recruiting firm that specialized in sales, which was my background. And they ultimately, after meeting me a couple of times, they wanted to hire me to do that work and to be a recruiter. And I wasn't that interested in that because it's basically being on the telephone all the time.
Right.
But anyway, they were exhibiting at the Los Angeles Ad Expo this is in, I believe, December or so of maybe November of 1985. So this is a few months after I'd been out, looking for jobs and stuff. And I decided to go out there and check them out, maybe give them a little support or whatever, see what's happening, and walk the aisles. And I really didn't have a clue what a trade show was. I had been to trade shows before, but it wasn't in the forefront of my mind. I really didn't know what it was all about.
Well, it's pretty common for a lot of us, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I decided to go up there and I would network and see if I could meet a few people and shake some trees and see what happens. So I'm walking along one of the aisles, and I remember it like it was yesterday. There was a 30-foot inline exhibit for Skyline Displays. And back in that day, there were only 2 different types of displays that Skyline had. One of them was a curved pop-up style display, which is very prevalent still today. They had 3 of them lined up together. So it was a 30-foot exhibit, and there were 4 or 5 people standing out in front of it as the attendees walked by. So they were promoting Skyline to potential customers, but they were also looking for people to perhaps build their business because they were in their infancy. They were a very small company at the time. So I recognized one of the people in the exhibit. He was somebody that I had met in Hawaii a few years earlier. And so I went up to him and we had a conversation, and he was telling me about the business. And I was thinking, well, this sounds kind of interesting. And he invited me to come along with him on some sales calls. Because he was, at the time, the Orange County Skyline distributor, we called him at the time.
Okay.
Young guy, just out of Long Beach College, and really just starting the business pretty much. So I rode with him on a few appointments, and I really liked it. I liked what it was all about. And I wound up going to work for him as a salesperson.
Oh, wow.
And at the time that I joined him, we didn't even have an office. It was him.
Where were you working at?
A Long Beach apartment. It was him, a college friend of his, and myself, and the 3 of us were working on with a couple of desks in a Long Beach apartment.
How old were you at this point in time?
How old am I? I'm thinking, let's see, I was in my late 30s.
Late 30s. And you had a family at that point in time?
Had a family, and my wife was taking care of the kids, so she wasn't working. I was the only income producer. and my wife thought I was crazy. I'd never been in this type of business before.
Been there.
And it was a pretty much what we call a performance job. In other words, you get paid basically on what you sell.
Right, you eat what you kill.
Eat what you kill.
Right, yep.
And so anyway, I went off and started doing that. And I was highly motivated because I'd been out of work for a while and I needed to provide for my family.
Absolutely.
So, and at the time, Skyline was in a phase in which they were getting quite a lot of interest. They were getting a lot of response to their advertising. We were getting a lot of leads. We would go out to businesses and we would show them the physical product. We'd carry it in our cars with us,
Wow.
show them the physical product, and hopefully make a sale at that point.
So
it
that's
was
like
almost,
Willie Loman territory.
exactly. It was
you know?
almost like door-to-door sales back
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
And I would say that went on for a few months. And then we eventually got an office space in Anaheim.
Oh, okay.
And then from there, just kind of gradually in chunks, grew the business.
Wow.
And then at a point in time, I became a partner with the original dealer. His name is Ken Wolf, and we've known each other for a long time. And we became business partners. I invested in the business, bought a portion of it.
Mhm.
And then after a few years, as business partners do, we had some differences. Didn't feel it was good to continue in a partnership.
Yep.
And I wound up purchasing the business from him. This was in 1995.
95.
And then
And that was, and you made that happen. It was amicable. You got out of it, and you know,
exactly. And then
kudos to you.
Ken actually wound up staying with us for a couple of years. He went back into sales and wanted to stay with the company, and it was great. He did
Man.
really, really well.
Yeah.
And he decided at one point in time that he wanted a kind of a change of scenery. So he moved up to the Bay Area to work for the Skyline office up there. That didn't work out the way he wanted it to.
Right. Yeah.
And he wound up at the Skyline Los Angeles office, another dealer, for quite a long period of time. And he actually has come full circle, and he's back with my organization now as of about 2 years ago.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, what a neat story.
So
Yeah.
it is kind of interesting. We go back a long way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, that's how I got into the business, and it's been really interesting, to
Mhm.
say the least.
Well, and then you told me offline that your son's been here a long time. You brought him into the business, which I always think that's not always easy to do, to bring kids into the business. And was that just a natural thing, or how did that work out?
Well, what happened was, first my wife came into the business.
Okay.
Just 6 months prior to the time that I purchased the business, she came on board to work in our service department. And she and I together ran the service department for the company at the time. The company was quite small. I think we had less than a dozen people at that time.
Mhm.
And then, so after I bought the business, obviously she remained in the business, and she's about ready to celebrate like a 24th year or something, 25th
Wow.
year. So she's still here. And then we actually have two sons. Our older son, Mike, came into the business first. And when he came into the business, he went into sales. He worked with us for about 5 years in
Mhm.
sales, and then decided he wanted to move in another career direction. He's had a very successful career. He worked for Oakley. He's now working for a large ad agency up in Portland
Nice.
called RGA. They
Nice.
do a lot of Nike work.
Portland, Oregon.
Portland, Oregon,
Yeah.
right? And he has a family as well.
Mm-hmm.
So he was here and then left the business. And my younger son, Grady, who has a great operations mind, he's running the operations side of the business. His
Oh,
title
okay.
is Director of Service Operations.
Got it.
So he and his mom work together on that side of the business. And that's the side of the business that handles all of the exhibit management companies that I was telling you about.
Yeah.
And all of the production type things and the logistics types things. That's what they handle in that department.
I'm always amazed to hear about families that work together, especially husband and wife, because it's not always easy to do. I mean, you're around each other all the time. You know, God love your spouse, but you could probably travel around teaching a lesson or two on just how to work with the family. I mean, it's not easy to do all the time. Like, congrats.
No, it's not. And we've had a pretty good working relationship over the years because we have distinct responsibilities.
Right. Yeah. Key.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I'm actually the sole owner of the business.
Mm-hmm.
We're all tied together as a family, of course.
Right.
And then eventually Grady will have some ownership in the
Yeah.
business, and
Yeah.
eventually, when my wife and I retire, he would take over the business at that point in time.
Right. And you probably, I mean, there's got to be, you have a separation between work life and home life. Is there a balance there?
We try to make that balance work. Sometimes it doesn't work so well.
Right.
But,
no more work talk at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But all in all, it's been pretty good. And you know, you hear about these situations in businesses where the family dynamics completely interfere with the business or even destroy a business.
All the time.
So
All the time.
I consider myself pretty lucky.
You're doing something right, yeah.
That we've been able to work together successfully.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, you seem to have the right temperament for that. You and I have known each other for a few years. I think that's part of it, you know, it's just being able to handle that. And your business, and we're going to take a look around here in a minute at some of the exhibits, because there's some really colorful stuff you got going on out there. But this business has changed, you know, over the years, and you were telling me earlier about the changes with materials that are used in the exhibits, and it's kind of fascinating to see the cloth.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm saying that right, but the cloth that's
Yeah.
used now for exhibits.
Yeah, technically we refer to it as fabric.
Fabric, okay.
And the universal term for this is SEG, which is silicon edge graphics. And what they're referring to on the silicon edge is that there's a piece of like a magnet piece or a stiff piece of silicon on the edge of graphics, which slips into a groove on exhibits and pulls the graphic tight around the exhibit area that it goes, around the structure, and that's why they refer to it that way. And fabric material has been around in the industry for probably 10 years or so. And in the early days of fabric, we were getting images that were kind of bland and kind of washed out, and the technology hadn't really caught up
Yeah.
with the quality of other types of mediums. But over the years, that's changed, and nowadays you can get tremendous saturated color on fabric almost universally. It's really fantastic. The process is called dye sublimation. So what they're doing is they're printing the actual graphic on another substrate, and they're transferring that image onto the fabric material on another machine. So it's about as technical as I can be about it.
Right.
But anyway, it has led to a revolution in the business because now graphics can even be easier to handle. They just fold down into small places. In addition to that, you can get large, huge mural-size images that are seamless as a result of them being fabric. You don't have to cut them up into pieces in order to handle them or ship them. So it's really a tremendous change in the business. And then the second part of that change was that just in the last couple of years in particular, the backlit aspect of fabric graphics has really come into play, in that you're now getting tremendous saturated backlit colors on these graphic materials, and you saw some examples in the showroom.
It was incredible. The one with the wine, I told you before, it looked like you could just grab it and drink the wine.
Yes, and,
Yeah.
and we may do that. But anyway, as a result of that, so much of the exhibiting companies are going to backlits now, and all the exhibit houses are designing it that way. And you go on to a trade show floor now, and you're going to see backlighting everywhere, and it's all fabric.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's really contributed to this is the is the technology of LED lighting.
Oh, okay.
Because LED lighting has a way of distributing the light evenly. It's cool lighting, it's not hot lighting, doesn't violate any fire codes.
Burning up the materials or anything.
It's inexpensive,
Yeah.
it's flexible, you can change colors with it, you can do all kinds of things with it. And along with the graphics technology improving, the printing technology improving, the LED lighting technology has improved. And it's created this situation.
It's unbelievable. It's not your father's exhibit, industry anymore. I mean,
It's a whole new
high
ballgame.
tech. Yeah.
It very much is, yeah.
Very cool. Great. John, thanks so much.